Welcome back to the Coaching Unscripted podcast. I'm your host, Trey Belcher. With me, as always, my tag team partner, looking as only he can look, Corey Smallwood. How's it going, Corey? And Corey is MIA.
Corey is laid right there. Corey is like, he's a still life statue at this point.
Yeah, and you don't even get him smiling.
It's going to be just you and me, Trey. Corey's
looks like it. Looks like it. Come on back in when you get a chance, Corey.
Right. They just put a cardboard cutout of him.
Well, when Corey jumps back in, we'll get him going. There he is.
Got it. There we go.
Yeah.
Welcome to and then internet dropped.
Yes. You were.
Road.
You were just a statue there for a minute or so.
Well, just know that's how it is, man.
That's
how it goes sometimes.
Well, I know, Trey, you're in Danville, Virginia. I've been very close to there, so I know that internet's probably a recent phenomenon down there at Smith Mountain Lake country.
Well, everything's working as it should here. It's Clarksburg, Maryland that seems to be the issue.
Just outside of Washington, D.C., and everything starts to shut down.
Well, I hope that's not a precursor for some other things shutting down. Joining us today for episode 25 is the man. There's no need for a huge introduction. He's owner of Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning. He's on the Mount Rushmore of functional training. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Boyle, welcome in, Coach.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it. I love doing this.
You and I have never had the chance to sit down and talk. We've been around each other, but there's always a crowd around you, and for good reason. And I always had the thought, the desire to have you on here. So being able to have this conversation is a lot of fun. So welcome in. Thanks so much for doing it.
No problem. My pleasure.
You've got the Strength Coach podcast. You've got so much content out there on training modalities, and whether it's you sitting in your car giving your 1-minute spiels or your teaching Tuesdays, all these things. But I want to talk about Mike Boyle. I want to talk about Mike the bartender. I want to talk about Mike the house flipper. I want to talk about the stuff that we don't get to hear a lot. So some of the things that I've heard you talk about are very human aspects. When you're training, when you're coaching, be nice. Don't be a jerk. Just these things that I've heard you say. And I want to know where those things came from. What is it in your background? What is it in your development that created the Mike Boyle that we see today that is a godfather in this business?
Well, a couple things. One, my father was a high school teacher, high school principal, and I watched him my whole life, and I watched the way he conducted himself around people, and I saw how people felt about him. He died young. Actually, he was younger than me when he passed away. But his funeral, I tell people the story all the time. His funeral was like a parade in the city of Malden, and his wake, it was supposed to go 2 to 4 and 7 to 9 was how they did wakes in those days. So we're talking about like early 1980s, and both days it just went 2 to 10 straight through. And almost every person that was in line had been to Malden High School and had either had my father as a teacher or had my father as a coach or had my father when he was the principal. And my wife and I will still go out. My father would be like 102 or something like that if he was still alive. We still go out and meet people. And when I say I'm Arthur Boyle's son, someone will go like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. He was like, I meet people all the time say, I wouldn't have gotten out of high school if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't have gotten a job if it wasn't for him. So I grew up watching really good role models. And even I always tell people the story. My father's best friend and the number 2 guy at the high school was the head custodian. What other school? I don't know anybody else in a school setting where you would walk in and think, the second most powerful person here, the guy with the most juice next to my father, was literally pushing a trash can around with a broom. But he was the other guy running the show. And so I guess I grew up for respect for everybody. Again, my father coached basketball, so we learned about race relations in, the early 1970s in terms of, I just didn't know there was racism from growing up in that environment. So there was so many lessons that I got as a kid. Then I got a chance to go to Springfield College, which was an amazing experience in terms of learning how to teach and learning how to coach and really being around incredible professional people who really were completely selfless, because Springfield didn't pay well. It wasn't the kind of place, it was the kind of place you went because you wanted to serve. I mean, the motto, humanics, philosophy, spirit, mind, and body. And they took that really, really seriously. But then I got out in the field and I worked for some and I worked with some, and I saw some people not treat people the way that I expected them to be treated. I saw them not treat me the way that I expected to be treated. I went to seminars early on and I saw people that were teaching at those seminars who were rude and dismissive. And I thought, so there was a whole bunch of lessons early on about how I wanted to be. And then there was a later series of lessons, maybe about how I didn't want to be. Who was the guy I didn't want to be, that I don't want to be? And I won't say names. Some of those guys are still out there doing it today. And I won't do them the disservice of mentioning their names, but I learned how not to do it. And I guess that all kind of gets rolled into this guy that you see present now, I've been doing it a really long time. I appreciate the fact that people come to listen. I'm thankful that they're there. I'm grateful that they're there. And when people say, like you guys say nice things about me, that's great. But I don't take myself particularly seriously. I'm really worried about what people think of me. And at the same time, I'm not at all worried about what people think of me. I'm really worried in that I would really like people to think that when they meet me, wow, he was nicer than I expected. He was a really good guy. He bought me a beer. He spent the time to engage me in conversation. I want that to be the effect when I meet people. What a guy, whatever. Like I said, rude, dismissive, self-centered. I didn't want to be those things. So I guess that's how I got there.
I think it's so cool that the platform that we're using this is to learn more about the behind the scenes aspects of, whether it's you or Martin Rooney, or we just had Bill Parisi on, and some of the legends in this business. I didn't know that about you. My dad was a middle school principal and a basketball referee, and some of the same stories that you were saying, I was like, yes, I think telling these stories, there are a lot more coaches and just people out there that relate to that outside of the fitness, whether it's like I'm a single leg guy or not a single leg guy, or I do like back squatting or not back. It's like, man, Mike Boyle's real. Look at where he's coming from, and that just brings a whole new dimension and depth to you as a presenter, educator, coach, boss. All of those.
We just lost Corey again.
I'm back.
The internet is down in Northern Virginia.
Yeah, Clarksburg is a tough place.
Tough place here.
Tough place for internet.
But I think
it's funny. Hopefully he's listening. But it's funny. Mark Verstegen's dad was a high school principal too. He's one of my best friends in the field. It's amazing how many people you'll find, I think, who came out of educator backgrounds and it wasn't like they were professors at Stanford. They were probably in some small town somewhere. Probably in a small town having a really big effect. I think that's probably the best way to describe it.
Yeah. Well, for me, seeing these things and hearing these stories, my dad built tires at Goodyear for 30 years. So, I have coaches, and one of my best friends, his dad was one of my coaches. And to have those people that influence your life and affect you in a positive way. And I've got one coach, he's a black man from Detroit and came down through the HBCUs and ended up in my school. And we were as thick as thieves. And still to this day, 25 years later, having those influences, because like anything, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And you have to have that care to build that trust. And once you build that trust, you can do anything. And then you almost don't want to let that person down. You almost want to carry on that legacy, whether it is a parent or whether it is a coach, whether it is, whomever that is in your life, you want to carry on those legacies because of the profound effect they had on you.
Yeah, no question. I mean, and I think I'll give Chris Poirier his props here at the same time, because Chris, when you look at, I actually listened to you guys. I listened to your episode, Trey, with Corey on my way home today, because I said, okay, I got to get a little more familiar with these guys in terms of what their background is. But Chris has done a really good job of surrounding us all with good people. And one of the things that I told him when we very first started, because we've been friends kind of since day one. I actually remember watching him play in college. I was coaching at Boston University when he was playing at URI. And I remember Bill Falk telling me that he was going to hire Chris. He was like, oh, I got this kid from URI that's going to come on, and we're going to start another company. And but one of the things that I always said to him was basically that no rule. Like, I don't want to go away for the weekend with some of these that I see present at the NSCA or at some of these places that are not good guys. And he built that business around that idea with, hey, we're going to bring in. And that's why I'll tell you, and I won't even say 90%. I'll tell you, I'll say 99% of the people you'll meet on the Perform Better circuit are really genuinely nice people. And as you said, whether, I don't know. I don't agree with everything Martin Rooney does from a training perspective. I don't agree with everything Todd Durkin does from a training perspective. There's a lot of people I don't necessarily agree with everything they do from a training perspective. but I really like and respect those guys. And I really enjoy the time I get to spend with them, to the point where, I mean, a lot of times that was what made you keep going back out on the road year after year, was that, hey, I get to hang with these guys for a night. You know, I'll be able to get on Friday, hang out with these guys Friday night, present on Saturday, and then I'll go back Saturday night. And that was a pretty good weekend.
Yeah. And I think even if you don't always agree with them, they're always willing to sit down and have the conversation with you to say, well, here's why I think this, versus you go to some of the other conferences out there and it's my way or the highway, or, you know, who are you to even, you know, challenge my beliefs on this? That's one of the things that I always found amazing about it, was you could go up, whether it's at the Q&A that, you know, Chris now has in the Perform Better summits, or during the social, and just have conversations with them.
Yep, no question. And that, again, I think the socials probably the best part of the summit in my mind. And not just because I like beer, but it's you get to talk to people. And from, you know, if you're a customer, if you're a client, an attendee, however we want to classify them, you're in the same room with these guys, and they're all really nice and really approachable. And, you know, I heard Trey's story about going up and pulling Gray Cook in and telling him that they were going to become friends. And Gray probably got a little creeped out, like, I'm a little worried about this guy, but it worked.
Well, you have to, sometimes you have to shoot your shot, and then it becomes a judge of character on his side and a proof of character on my side, and you just keep showing up, and you keep being consistent, and you keep being who you are. And if you're honest and you're real, you don't have to worry about putting on anything. And you know, it helps being in a small town in Danville and Chatham, where there aren't many people doing these things. So, you know, I kind of had a captive audience to a certain extent, but thankfully, you know, it worked out, and they brought me along, and me coming to the Perform Betters, and everybody else, just like you said, everybody else just welcoming me in, and me feeling like an outsider, not an outsider, but an imposter, or you know, you feel like this guy from the small town, and everybody's like, hey, you're one of us now. And I said something to Erin Milani one time, the first time I went, and I said, you know, I feel a little bit more like part of the family. And she said, you are part of the family, and if I hear you say that again, I will slap the you know what out of you. And I said, okay, fair enough. But
that's Erin.
Yeah.
Mike, it's amazing the amount of people that have come through Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning, from, you know, Card and Marco and Ben Bruno, and just some amazing coaches that have come through your organization and gone to do amazing things with their career. Can you touch on why do you think that is? Why is it such a good, whether it's an internship program or a way of kind of catapulting your career forward? Is there something that you guys do there that's unique? And on top of that, can you talk about the importance of starting that way, starting your career off as whether it's an intern or having a mentor to kind of guide you through that? There are a lot of people that right now, especially with social media, everybody comes out and is like, I just got certified, now I'm going to be an influencer.
Well, I think we put a lot of emphasis on that aspect. We want our internship program to produce good coaches. That's what it's there for. It's not, yes, it benefits us. It benefits us as a business greatly, because we will have this summer, we've probably got 20 interns. So but it benefits those interns more than it benefits us. That's why it's really funny when you look at some of the legalities around internship. And one of the things is that they have to be getting value. You can't just be using them to perform
labor
jobs. Right. Yeah. And they've made that illegal. But we really look at it and think, no, there's a very significant exchange here, in terms of we're exchanging information for time. And so you're spending time with us, but we put a lot of thought and a lot of time and a lot of energy into organizing that internship program. And it has produced, you're talking about coaches, recent coaches that are young, that are just around. You could go through, we probably got, I don't even know. We might have 20, 30, 40, 50 people out there in professional sports and college sports at every level. There's guys in the NBA. I just spoke to the NBA strength coaches a couple of weeks ago, and I actually saw one guy I had forgotten. He's a head strength coach in the NBA, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot he was a head strength coach in the NBA. And only because there's so many of these people out there, and we don't really do a great job of cataloging it and keeping sort of a great alumni roster and say, hey, we've got guys in we've got guys in Charlotte and Boston and Memphis, all these places, in the NHL, we've got guys, most of our New England guys up here in Hockey East, most of those hockey guys were guys that at some point interned at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning. So we've done a really good job. And what happens is that those people doing a great job means more people get jobs, because people will come out and they'll call me and say, hey, I want one of your guys. I want one of your girls, one of your women, whatever it is. And that'll be kind of the requirement that, hey, if they haven't done an internship with us, I had a really great conversation. We've got an intern this summer who I'm hoping is going to let these second interview for a job, I think tomorrow. But I initially met him and he had never interned with us. And I said, hey, you seem like a great guy, but I really can't recommend you for a job, because as much as I've met you socially and you seem like a really nice young man, I cannot attest to your coaching ability. And I can't say that you know the system. So if someone said to me, if someone says to me, I need a strength coach, I need to give them a strength coach who understands our system, because that's generally what that person is asking for. And then you just hit it off like the Kevin Carrs of the world. And obviously now, my partners, Kevin is now a partner in the business. Steve Bigelow is a partner in the business. Vinny Toledo is a partner in the business. Dan McGinley is a partner in the business. So we've figured out ways to create some legacy, I guess, and to create some continuity, so that these guys are now literally invested in the business, and they're very much a part of what the future of that business is going to look like. But they're there. They've been with us long enough that they understand what we value. They understand what we think is important, and the things that we value and think are important are going to stay that way. And that's what was important to me in thinking about, hey, how do I make this business self-perpetuating? And the way that you do that is you get these great young guys and you get them financially invested in the business, but you keep mentoring them in the business in terms of, hey, these are the things that are important to us, not just to me, because I do think what's important to me should be important to them, in the sense of how we're going to treat our customers, how we're going to treat our fellow workers, how we're going to treat somebody that's an intern. Because I always say, interns, they're not janitors, they're not golfers, don't be disrespectful. We have to have that conversation fairly frequently with our young coaches, because sometimes young coaches will get all excited about the fact that, hey, I got a little bit of power now. There's somebody lower than me. And sometimes you got to look at someone and think, this is not how this works. I don't look at you that way. Why would you look at them that way? I don't look at you and think you're lower than me. Therefore, I'm going to tell you to go get something from me that I can obviously go get myself. Right. And we just keep teaching, I guess, that system of behaviors is really what it comes down to. You keep modeling for people like today. And I do it every day when I've been going into our facility in Middleton, our smaller facility. And it's outside of an ice rink, and it's always a mess outside. There's always cups and wrappers and shit all over the ground. I pick stuff up every day, and I bring it in and I throw it in the trash, because I'm like, I don't like the fact that the parking lot looks like shit. And I hope somebody sees me do it. But generally, almost every day I walk in there by myself. Today, I literally got like 2 socks, a tape ball, not a lie, 2 socks, a tape ball, and a candy wrapper. And I carried them in and I threw them in the trash. And I was like, okay, it looks a little better coming in than it did when I was going the other way. But it's funny, because someone was saying to me the other day, they were really impressed because at the Christmas party when the trash can was full, I took the trash out. But I looked at it and thought, like, what kind of asshole am I if the trash can's full? Oh, I'm going to go find an intern to take the liner out of the trash can and take it out to the dumpster. It's like, I can do that. Like, I mean, the dumbest person here can pull the trash can liner out of the trash can and carry it out to the dumpster. When you're the boss and you do it, everybody else looks and sees and says, hey, wait a sec, Mike just took the trash out. Mm-hmm. That means the next time they're taking the trash out. And it also means probably a lot less times I actually have to take the trash out. But if I never did it, what we'd be teaching is this idea that, hey, if you want the trash taken out, you go find somebody lower on the totem pole than you, and you tell them they need to take the trash out. I modeled for them that when the trash is full, it should go out. That means our coaches now look and they realize that when the trash is full, it should go out. If I'm the one standing next to it, then it should be me that does that. And that's really, it is literally how our business operates. And anybody that when you guys, if you come at some point, and I hope you do, if you come and visit, that's what you'll see. You'll get greeted right away by somebody who's genuinely happy to see you and wants to make sure you're getting to wherever it is you were trying to go. And coaches will engage you. You'll probably get said hello to 10 times in the first hour that you're there by 10 random people that you don't know. because they know that that's the behavior that we want to model. You're a guest. Somebody just showed up, like if you came to my house and I didn't talk to you, right? You'd be like, this guy's an asshole, right? I mean, like I came to his house and he left me standing at the door and then didn't talk to me, right? It's the same exact behavior. And I think that's, people always ask us like, why do you have such a successful business? And I said, because we understand how simple business is. And other people, they're worried about funnels and they're worried about this and they're worried about that. And I'm thinking, I'm just worried about being really nice to our customers and being really nice to our employees and having a place that people feel comfortable in and want to come back to. And if we do that, they'll probably be comfortable and they'll probably come back. And what do you do, right? If you find a place that you like, you bring your friends. In that, again, coffee shop, restaurant, bar, I don't care what it is, but you think, hey, I like that place. I went there. They were nice to me. They treated me well. We should go back there together. And I think people make the business part way too complicated and then don't do a really good job at the simple stuff that's probably really going to carry you.
And they overemphasize the harder stuff because they are not great at the simple stuff. And so all their eggs go in one basket and realize that it's the wrong basket.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I've been to your facility back in 2018 with when Pat Beath had the Speed and Power Summit up there. And I met Craig Seidenglanz there. And we still communicate, whether it's text message or whether it's social media, we still stay in contact. And just from that little one time, and there's so many things to unpack from that, and how you have influenced me, even from an outside perspective. I model a lot of what I do based on what I've seen and heard from you. And it's always, and that's just my personality also, but it's always about the people. It's always about the relationships that you build. It's always about the connections between and among people. And when you have those things, everything else kind of takes care of itself. Yes, you have to know your numbers. You have to have your business stuff. Yes. But the simple human connections, and that's a lot of what this podcast is about, is the human connections, humans behind the training. You can find innumerable things on the internet, through all your social channels, whatever, about your training. But I want to talk to Mike Boyle, the man. I want to know more about how these things come to pass. Like when you guys have your interns in, when you do your teaching, how much of it is the training and how much of it is the personal connections? How much of it is the humanity of it?
Well, the first part is the humanity. We try to do a really good job of picking the right people. So that's a big part of it. And again, we're selective, and we're selective in probably a different way because, and I've said this, you guys have heard me speak, but fitness is sometimes a really narcissistic field. So, we generally want to stay away from those kinds of people. Like I always say, sometimes if someone might send an internship application in and be like, oh my God, I love working out, bodybuilding is my hobby. I work out 2 hours a day. I'm really conscious of how I eat and how I look. My reaction might be, that's probably not the person for us. That person would be better off, working at Gold's Gym or working at Planet Fitness or something like that. But if I looked at your resume and it said, hey, I was captain of my college track team and I really want to be a coach and I've been really strongly influenced by the coaches that I had, I'm looking and thinking, yeah, that's probably who we want. So I think that's a big part that goes into it initially, is that it's the good to great idea, right? Get the right people on the bus before you ever move the bus. So, and I tell the interns, first meeting, I'm like, if you figure out this isn't for you, just come and tell us. I don't want you to have to finish the internship. Don't feel like you have to finish this. I would rather you say, hey, I don't like this. I can't stand, it's so repetitive. We say the same things over and over again. We're here early in the morning. We're here late at night. Not for me. Good. Get out, because it's not going to be for you. And you're going to have wasted a whole summer to find that out. But then the training part starts. And, again, we go through in the first intern meeting, we talk about learning names. I always say it's probably the most negative I am at any point in time during the year is that first intern meeting, because there's a lot of don'ts that we kind of lay out there for people and showing them the pitfalls. And I always use this example all the time, and I won't say the guy's name because he was actually a really good guy, but he was one of these young guys who was so excited about how much he knew and just wanted to coach and couldn't wait, and was just like running around overcoaching people and offending people. He had one of our football guys who was getting ready to go to the NFL who basically just was like, stop bothering me. he came back and he was like, I don't understand. And I said, what's his name? And he was like, I don't know. What position does he play? He's like, I don't know. I said, where did he go to college? He said, I don't know. I said, then what were you doing coaching him? What would prompt you to go to an NFL prospect whose name you didn't know, whose position you didn't know, whose college you didn't know? It shows me you've had no conversations with this guy whatsoever, yet you were dying to tell him what he was doing wrong to show him how smart you were. And we use that example all the time because this kid may have been 100% right in terms of whatever that guy was doing might not have been technically correct and might have benefited from some coaching. But he would take that coaching really well from someone who came up to him and used his name, who had talked to him during the course of that week, who he had some experience with outside of the coaching point that was coming. And this guy was kind of looking at me like, okay, I get it. I understand. And we make that point. It's like, again, we tell people all the time, introduce yourself to people. Don't coach people. You just got here. But I also tell them, you can probably coach a middle school kid because they don't know. They probably just got here too. And they probably have no idea who anybody is. And they're not going to know. You're older than them. You got a red shirt. They're probably going to assume you know what you're doing. I said, but, if there's guys in the pro group or there's some girl over there that's playing in the Olympics, probably leave her alone. Let somebody else, let someone who's a little more familiar with him or her coach that person. So they get, I don't know, they get a lot of coaching theory early on. And they don't do a lot of coaching, honestly. They watch a lot. They set up a lot. They break down a lot. They watch the other coaches coaching. And then slowly we start to feed them into it in terms of, okay, you can, take them through, you can have them, you can take them through foam rolling and stretching, and then you can take them through foam rolling and stretching and dynamic warm up. We're gradually giving them more and more responsibility. And one of the things I tell them is that the better you are, the more responsibility you'll get, the sooner you'll get it. If you're good, I'm not going to hold you back and say, go stand over there and don't coach. We've had some guys like my son thinks he wants to be a strength and conditioning coach. We'll see. He's got 2 more years of college, but we went out to Springfield College on Saturday and I was telling him one of our guys just got a job as an NHL assistant, literally right out of college. But it was because he came and he volunteered after his freshman year of college. He was playing college football, but he said, can I work during the break? Can I help out? Can I intern? Can I do whatever? And he was just a good coach. And then it was like, okay, his name's Ray Magliozzi. And it was like, Ray can cover groups. Like if we need somebody, Ray can cover your group because Ray knows what we're doing. Ray can coach. Ray understands it. He worked for us for 2 years. He went out to the under 18 national development program out in Michigan after his junior year. And the guy that was running the show out there loved him to the point where he calls me and was like, do you have any more of these guys? Because he's got 3 of our guys out there now. And this guy moved on to the Buffalo Sabres and then hired Ray as an assistant. And Ray was like he was like getting all ready to go to Merrimack to grad school. And he's like, I just got a job with the Buffalo Sabres as a full-time assistant. I was like, yeah, but you earned that job 3 summers ago by being a really good coach. And that's, that's how it works. I guess it's very much a meritocracy where we are. In terms of if you're good, you get rewarded. I got another kid, same thing. CJ Lavery, he's in the NFL right now working. I forget what team. He was with the Bears last year, but he was switching because the Bears coach changed. But he was the same way. Like it was just obvious, like, hey, this kid's good. Let's get him to work right away. And then when it came time for internships, I had no problem contacting NFL guys and saying, hey, I got a really good young guy for you here who's gonna fit right in. And he did.
Awesome.
So when you churn these guys out, and I say that in a way that is as deferential as possible. There's so many of the top coaches, and Corey's named some names, and you've named some names. These guys that as they come out of the system, are they telling you, hey, this is what I want the next steps to be, or are you asking, or is that something that's a conversation throughout the internship program, a track, or something like that? How does it work? Where you've got all the contacts in the world.
It's a combination of the two, truly. In terms of, and it's really interesting, and I should tell the story every time I have the intern meeting, but I didn't realize we had a young guy 2 years ago who actually I thought seemed like kind of a power lifter type. I don't know how he actually ended up getting the, probably wasn't what I would call our typical intern. He looked like a little bit of a meathead when I saw him, and I was like, but he was a really good guy. Gabe Sanchez was his name. And then suddenly it's, baseball season is rolling around. It's getting ready for baseball season. Somebody mentions that, hey, we need Red Sox are looking for an intern coach. And all of a sudden, Vinny Toledo said, what about Gabe? And I'm like, Gabe, like kind of powerlifter, Gabe? And he's like, yeah, he speaks Spanish. He played baseball, and he wants to work in Major League Baseball. And I was like, he does? I said, why didn't anybody fill me in on that? And it was kind of like, oh, I guess he just got glossed over. And literally the next day, he was getting ready to leave to work for the Red Sox. So we want people. I have some people that I know, and I know that when they come in, that I know where they want to be. And then there are other people maybe who aren't as expressive about it. And so we have to sometimes kind of draw that out of them. Like, what's the goal? Is the goal you want to be a coach at Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning? Is the goal like, hey, I really love this combination. I love private sector. I love the fact that we get to do sports performance and we get to do general fitness. Or is it the goal like, the CJ played football at Springfield. CJ's goal was, hey, I want to be in the NFL. I want to work in the NFL. I will always try to help people get to where they want to go, provided where they want to go is equal to what their skill level is. Sometimes you might get someone who said, hey, I want to be somewhere. And it's like, well, you may need to go to point A before you go to point B. And then there are other people that you could look at and think, you're going to get to pass go and go right to the next step on the game here. And then you get a guy like Ray, like the kid Ray that I was talking about. He was a football player, but he ended up liking being around the hockey guys and thinking, hey, I think I want to work in hockey. And then another one of our guys, Joe Maloney, had gone out to the national, the under-18 development program. But Joe's a great story. Joe's now running the under-18 program for USA Hockey. But he basically got the job because he went to the facility with his team. He was working as a strength and conditioning coach with a team, a junior team in Chicago. And he went to the guys running the facility and said, hey, can I bring my team in to warm up in here? And they were like, yeah, sure. Nobody else traveled with a strength coach and asked if they could warm up. He literally did such a great job running his team through his warm up and doing what he's supposed to do that these guys took notice. And when they had an assistant position open, they contacted him and said, hey, we watched you coach your guys and we saw the way you put your guys through the warm up. We saw how you did everything and we think you'd be perfect here. Now he's in charge, but that was strictly because he was like, I'm going to go here and I'm going to do my job and I'm going to do it well. And generally speaking, that works out.
You are able to offer a lot of these opportunities for whether it's your interns or your staff because of the groundwork that you had laid from coaching at the collegiate level, strength and conditioning for, Olympic programs and hockey programs and, for the Red Sox. What are some of the best experiences that you've had personally in those levels outside of Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning?
That's an interesting question. I mean, I've had a lot of interesting experiences. I think some of the not so good ones were the best ones. This is sort of a little known story, but in 2003, I was kind of fed up with the whole Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning scene. I had not done a great job of creating a business that I really wanted to spend the rest of my life in, and I left. When I worked actually for Athletes Performance, I worked for Mark Verstegen for a year in their facility in oh my God, I can't believe Carson, California. Sorry, I was blanking there for a little bit. It was Home Depot Center. And one of the responsibilities that we had at the Home Depot Center was that we were going to train the 2004 women's Olympic soccer team. And got into a situation there. April Heinrich was the coach at that time, and we met with her. And I think these were a little bit of forced marriages in terms of the way the whole relationship worked. We were going to work with the LA Galaxy that was based out of there. We were going to work with the women's Olympic team that was based out of there. We were going to work with private athletes that were based out of there. And particularly in the women's Olympic side, I don't think they were sold on us, truthfully. So my conversation with April Heinrich, she came in and she said, basically, I've had some really bad experiences with strength coaches, and I'm going to make this pretty clear to you. I don't want to come in that weight room and see anybody with a bar on their back, and I don't want to come in and see anybody with a bar in their hands. And I thought, she got the football guy somewhere along the way, wherever she was coaching, and her women's soccer players were doing heavy back squats and cleans, and people weren't happy. The girls weren't happy. She wasn't happy. And so I went back and I sat down. I had Shad Forsyth, who's been in Europe now for probably 20 years between Arsenal and German national team and a bunch of things. And another guy named Anthony Slater, who's unfortunately out of the game, who was one of the best young coaches I ever worked with. But it was Anthony and Shad and I. And I sat them down and I said, okay, here's the deal. April, I was a big hang clean person. I was not a big back squat person. I said, but April basically said, no squats, no cleans. So we got to kind of think, what's plan B going to be? We had, Julie Foudy and Mia Hamm and Brandy Chastain and Christine. Like we had that was the era of women's soccer in the United States. And we had all the best players that were there. And we just put a program together and went for it. And the girls loved it and they had a blast and they made progress. They won a gold medal. But the experience was great because I realized that ultimately you work for the head coach and that you've got to design a program that is going to make that head coach, I guess, comfortable at least and hopefully happy. And I can remember she would send her assistant down, and I can't think of the assistant's name, but he would come down with a piece of paper, and he knew nothing about strength and conditioning because I would watch him, and he would write things like squatting on one leg, dumbbells in hands, and I was like, okay, he doesn't even know what the exercises are. But I would leave, and he would have this little piece of paper that had on it what he had seen that we had done. And I knew that she said, you go down there and you write down everything that you see and you bring it back up to me and you tell me. So it was one of those where you have to be adaptable. You've got to look at it. So, same thing when I worked for the Bruins. We didn't even have a weight room. We had we had a closet with mismatched dumbbells and a bunch of crap that people had basically given to the team because they didn't want to buy any equipment. We used to work out in the hallways and you look at it and think, hey, this is the NHL, this is professional sports. And we're doing circuits in the hallways with mismatched dumbbells. We got one round 25 and one hex head 25, and you learn. That was one of the great things about Springfield College. I alluded to that earlier, but Springfield really taught you because it wasn't a particularly well-funded place, but it was a really well-staffed place, and you learned that hey, you're going to go places, and it's not going to be ideal, and you're going to have to figure it out. And I had a teacher there. Her name was Dr. Murray, Mimi Murray, and I still remember she taught. The course was called Organization and Administration of Physical Education. And she got up at the start of the class and she basically said that pretty much, hey, it's really all about how you organize your practice, right? It's how you organize the system. And I remember she said, I've coached national championship teams in gymnastics and volleyball at Springfield College, and I did not ever play volleyball, and I was never a gymnast. But that stuck in my head. Because now people would look at me and say, oh, you're a hockey guy. I've never played in a hockey game in my life. Beyond I played pond hockey with my friends, but I've never worn hockey equipment. I've never been in a real game with a scoreboard and a time clock and a referee. None of that stuff has ever happened. I went Major League Baseball. I played baseball up till 12 and I was not good. It was one of those sports. I gave it up because I sucked. It was this is something that we're not going to pursue much further because you're not very good at it. And I've got a World Series ring. So you get that ability to be adaptable and to look at people and think, hey, this is what the task is today. Let's tackle the task.
Now, when we had Anthony Renna on, he told us a story about you guys going to a baseball game and then the second or third inning, you dip out of this thing and then they find you across the street in the bar.
At my friend's bar. Yeah, that's where I used to work.
Yeah, right.
That's the story.
Yeah, so I want to get your side of it. And that's kind of what I was alluding to when I talked about Mike, the bartender, and Mike, the house flipper, and all the other things. And you stop us when you got to get out of here. Because, I can go until tomorrow at this time if we're sitting here listening to Mike Boyle stories. But, the things that those influences, and I've, I don't know how many houses you flip now, 25, 30. And my wife and I have flipped 3. And there might not be number 4, but those things outside of Mike Boyle strength and conditioning and Mike Boyle, the strength coach, how, one, tell the story, and 2, how have those things influenced your life and your practice and your coaching and all those?
Well, the bartending thing influenced my life a lot because I talk about that, my wife and I, all the time. We learned how to work because I wanted to be a coach and nobody really wanted to pay me to be a coach in the beginning. So I think from probably 22 to 29, I was a part-time coach at Boston University and I was a bartender. And I would safely say that at least 80% of my income came from bartending. My wife was a waitress, eventually was a bartender and managing the restaurant, but we were in that service business for a really long time. And we that's how we made our living. But we worked. It was not unusual that we would work Friday night, Saturday day, Saturday night, Sunday day, because those were the money shifts. And when you work, and at that time I was working across from Fenway Park, and if the Red Sox were in town, you knew if you wanted to work Friday night, Saturday day, Saturday night, Sunday day, you were guaranteed. Now at that time, we're talking probably, I guess, late 80s, early 90s. We could make $400 or $500, $600 in the weekend, which at that time was a lot of money. And so we worked and we learned. And then, I mean, the story that you heard from Anthony is just the story. We went to the game, and then I was saying, oh, let's sneak across the street, because I knew that somebody would let us back in because we knew people at the park. So I'm like, we can come out of the park. The bar was literally across the street. We can run over, say hi to Rob, my friend who still owns the bar, have a couple of beers talking to him, and then we'll run back into the game. Obviously, we never ran back into the game. Rob never. I think it was it was me and Anthony and another friend of Anthony's, and Rob didn't charge us for anything. We were just behind the bar. Eventually, we were behind the bar, like making our own drinks and getting our own beers, waiting for the game to end, because the place is completely empty during the game. There's no one in there. So there's no one but us. There's probably like 4 bartenders, my friend Rob, me and Anthony, and I can't remember who else was with us, but somebody else was with us. And we got hammered, actually. And I'm not sure how Anthony got home. I'm not sure how I got home, actually, to be perfectly honest about it. But and Anthony was one of those, like, he couldn't believe, because it's like, okay, we know the people in the park, we know the people across from the park, but it was like Fenway was right by BU. That's why it was so weird. When I went to work for the Red Sox, I thought, this is really a full circle moment, because suddenly now I am like across the street from where I worked, in the dugout at the game. And that was just an amazing full circle moment for me, because truthfully, you used the word imposter, Trey, at one point, and I can remember distinctly being in the bar, and it was an underground bar, so there were stairs that you had to come down in, and I almost always worked at that front bar right by the stairs. And I'd see my friends from high school or from college come down, and I could almost feel their disappointment when they looked behind the bar and saw me, and and I could feel like in their mind they were saying, wow, I really thought Mike Boyle was going to amount to more than this. Like, I didn't expect to come down the stairs at this dive bar across from Fenway Park, and Mike Boyle would be behind the bar, slinging beers at a bunch of drunk Red Sox fans. And I can remember coming home and talking to my wife and being like, sometimes I want to scream at these people, like, you have no idea what I'm doing. Like, you have no idea what my life is like. Like, I'm at BU, I'm a strength coach, I'm working with all these athletes, I'm doing all this great stuff. And that's just you, like, it's just all rattling around in your head. None of it's coming out. And so there was some real vindication there when suddenly people are like, did I see you in the Red Sox dugout? And he was like, yeah, that was me. So it took 25 years to get there, but I got there.
Yeah, there's no time limit on it.
I just posted that on my strength coach site. Actually, I said playing the long game, because and I just posted a timeline of when I said 29 years old, got my first full-time job. 36 years old, got my first national championship ring. 40 years old, published my first book. 52 years old, I got a World Series ring. People are I meet kids that are in their 20s and they're worried about, I don't know what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I haven't made it yet. And it's kind of like, relax. There's so much. I mean, I didn't even start to think that I was making it, until I was, well into my 40s, truthfully.
Oh, and coming from somebody who has done everything backwards, and Corey and I have talked about this a lot, those words are always comforting to hear, because I just hit 41, and I was sold insurance for a few years. I was a firefighter for 10 years, all these things. And this was a side hustle until it grew enough to be the main gig. And that was just a couple years ago, 2.5 years ago. And to hear you say that, and I've heard some of the stories before, but to hear you say these things, that hits home. And I hope that it hits home for other people also, because, there is no linear path. And there is no one way. You can always improve your lot in life. But if you educate yourself and you surround yourself with the right people, doing all the right things, you can still make it, no matter how old you are, no matter what your history is, all those things.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. That's what I said. I literally wrote that out the other day, because I'm just always, and sometimes now I'm getting to be like the crotchety old guy who walked uphill to school both ways kind of thing, because I'm looking at some people and thinking, seriously, you're thinking about you're going to get out of the field at 28 because I don't know where I'm going, kind of thing. And it's like, you're 28. I didn't have health insurance at 28.
I love, and I'll even talk with Alan about this because Mike is so great that he responds to virtually every comment left on his social media, and just it's amazing that people troll you, people vehemently disagree with you, and you take the time to continue to educate them or ask them questions or things like that. That I love watching your content, but I love reading the comments just as much as I love watching your content, because you really you take the time and you will peel away the layers of the onion for some of these people and try to get them to understand. But where do you get the time to do all that, Mike?
I do it in the morning. I do it. I'm probably, both my wife and I are probably on our phones too much sometimes. I'll sometimes get into these Twitter things where I think, okay, I shouldn't really be doing this. But I do think, and I believe now, even with doing podcasts or doing social media, this is where education is
I
now.
agree.
So you have to go, if you want to teach, you've got to go to where the learning is taking place, right? So if you're looking at somebody like me, that's why whenever I meet anybody, I don't do social media, I just look at them like, what is wrong with you? Now, how can you not do social media? This is here to stay. This is like saying, I don't have a phone, right? I'm not going to buy a computer. It's a fad, right? I mean, there are things that you have to look at. And I think, and I've said this before, one of the things that's helped me to be successful is that I was an early adopter in a lot of areas in terms of, the internet and social media and a lot of these things. You just realize that people, like, they look at Twitter or Instagram. Twitter, I've got 70 something thousand followers. Instagram, I've got 140,000 followers. And you realize, wow, that means there's a possibility that 70,000 people or 140,000 people could see that comment or that reaction or that post or whatever it is. That's a greater reach than I've ever had in my life. So I think you need to take advantage of that if you really want to be an educator. And that's what I want to be. Like, I don't want to be an influencer per se, but I do want to be an educator. And I do want people to look at things and think, wow, just what you said. He actually does take the time. Like, yes, there was a perfect example. I got a little bit frustrated with a guy because I knew he was trolling. And then when I called him out on it, he came out and was like, well, yeah, all of a sudden you get, indignant or whatever. And I was like, no, this is my 6th response to this post. So I'm not getting, I'm maybe approaching indignant, but I didn't start that way. I've been trying to discuss my way through this. And then you've been continually like throwing up this sort of straw man argument kind of thing. Well, what about this and what about this? But I try to limit that. I really try to not let the reader frustrate me, and I try to look at it in terms of it's a little bit of a chess game in terms of that's why I will take my time and I will post links and I will say, hey, look at this, read this article, because what I want the people to realize, and I hate to say it, but I want them to realize, hey, I actually know way more about this than you do. And you're probably not arguing with the right person because, one, I'm not simply going to fold my tent and say, oh, you were right. I shouldn't have argued with you. And 2, I will probably continue on into the night and send you links to articles and books and whatever else, videos that will make you realize that, okay, this was maybe not the best argument to wade into if I want to be right. Because I get frustrated with people who are on social media to be right. Mm-hmm. And I get frustrated with people who get offended on social media because if you're posting, you should expect a reaction. You should never post and not think that you're going to get a reaction, because ultimately you are posting for a reaction, but you're hoping that the reaction will be positive. But you have to also realize that there's a potential for that reaction to be negative and for someone to look and think, hey, I didn't like what you posted, and here's why I didn't like it. And then you've got to, if you really believe in what you said, then you got to be prepared to dig in a little bit and kind of defend your point.
You've always said in every presentation that I've heard you give in some way, shape, or form have said, if you find a better way of doing something, please let me know. Please tell me.
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe that. I like nothing better than finding people smarter than me, because it makes me better. Our program gets better because ultimately my job is not to be, an internet arguer. My job is to help get my athletes get better, to help my coaches get better. And if that means I'm going to stumble upon somebody who is smarter than me, then that's a really positive thing. It's funny. We're going to Ireland Wednesday. I'm going to present at the Irish Strength Coaches Association, but I've got, basically 3 slides of just people who've influenced me. And a lot of them are young. A lot of them are guys in their 30s. And I don't care that they're in their 30s. I only care that they're subject matter experts in a particular area and that they've got more knowledge in that area than I do, and that I can benefit from that knowledge.
Well, you talked about responding to things on social media, but one of the things about you that has always struck me is your accessibility. And whether it's through strengthcoach.com and the forums, or you always post your email address when you give presentations. You say, hey, email me, I'll email you back. It may take me a little while, but I'll email you back. A couple years ago, probably several years ago now, I sent you an email at like 11 o'clock one night, just to say, ask some question. And sure enough, 7:30 the next morning, I had a response. And that you don't always see those things. And I think that is part of what gives you the standing that you have, and all the gravitas that goes along with it, and you just are who you are. And I appreciate that out of it.
Well, thank you. But I think that's how it should be, though, right? I mean, think about that. If you send someone an email, shouldn't they respond to the email? Right? I don't I would look at that and think that that's not such a large stretch. And that's why sometimes I think when people have that kind of, their opinion of themselves is so high, that's whenever, I don't like people who have assistants, right? Oh, my assistant will get back to you. There's nothing more self-important than having an assistant and telling people that you have an assistant and telling them that your assistant will get back to them. And it's like, oh my God, you are so incredibly important that you need someone to assist you. And that person will be the one who deals with people like me. I mean, I don't know. I've done okay, and I've never needed to have an assistant. I really do. I mean, how hard is it to respond? Some people say you send back one-word answers. I'm like, yeah, if you ask me what question that merits a one-word answer, I'll send you back a one-word answer, because I am busy. But I will, if you say, what do you think about this? Yes or no? Yes. Again, and I say, you guys heard me say, I say to people, hey, if you want a pen pal, don't use the email address. Like, I don't want you to email me every day telling me how your day went or about your friends or whatever. But if you have legitimate questions that particularly, that pertain to what we talked about, then I think you have the right to get those questions answered, because, hey, you paid to be here, and that should be part of the deal.
And that's the consummate educator as well. I think there are people that, are too busy or too involved in their own whatever they have going on, but you're constantly trying to educate, and whether that's another lesson from your father, but something where you do take the time.
We try, that's for sure. All right, we probably got time for one more question, and then I got to actually
Sure. Yeah, we were going to
get back to real life here.
Yep. So you talked about presenting. You talked about presenting in Ireland. We've got Perform Better coming up in Providence next week. You're presenting on program design for personal trainers. What's the plug on it? And then we'll wrap this thing up and get you out of here.
The couple-minute plug is, I think, when we really start to look at what I think we do better, Mike Boyle Strength and Conditioning does better than a lot of people, it is that program design aspect. So I've tried a little bit at Perform Better to maybe get out of the box a little and talk about some different things, but I said to Chris, ultimately, I think that's probably what we should be talking about, because you realize when you kind of get into internet world, how much people are struggling with the basics of programming. So we're going to go through joint-friendly programming for adults, because I still am seeing way too much kind of, starting strength, squat, bench press, deadlift kind of for the average gym goer. And that's just, honestly, I can't understand it. I can't fathom it. And I always say to people, our adults don't touch a straight Olympic bar. And this is coming from a strength coach. I like straight Olympic bars. I got a lot of straight Olympic bars, but I don't think they're good tools for, say, people like us. If we said we've got people between the ages of 35 and 75, I think dumbbell bench press is a better choice, right? I think goblet squat is a better choice. I think lat pull down is a better choice, whatever it is. Kettlebell sumo deadlift is a better choice. So we're going to try to run through that choice process of why maybe the barbell doesn't make the most sense, and why some of these alternatives. And people could look at it. I mean, is that functional training? Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know if I really know what functional training is all the time, but I think it's trying to say to people, be intelligent and be thoughtful about the process here as you go forward. Because if you do that, I look at it and think there's a reason we're being successful. There's a reason. I mean, we've got 350 something adult clients that are in groups, not counting our adult personal training clients. We might have 500 adult clients. I don't know how many personal training clients we have on top of those 300, but it's a lot. And we keep getting more. And I think we do it because when people always ask us, like, what's the difference? The difference is that we're smart and we're safe. It's a really thoughtful process where the probability is not only are you not going to get hurt, but you're probably going to feel better. And that's what adult fitness should be about, right? Adult fitness should be about somebody thinking, hey, I feel better. I move better. I have better balance. I get up and down stairs easier. I can handle my activities of daily living better than I could prior to coming to your facility. If that's what somebody says to me at the end of it all, then I'm thinking, right, home run. We did exactly what we had set out to do. So that's the talk, the nutshell.
Well, I know I can't wait to hear it, and I'm sure I speak for Corey because you never know when his internet's going to go out. That he's happy to hear it too. So
I'll be there.
Coach,
I'll be there.
can't. Yep, we'll all be there. We'll share a beverage together, and really looking forward to it. But Coach, I can't
Thank
tell
you
you
guys
how
very
much
much.
I appreciate
Pleasure
it.
getting to hang with you guys for an hour.
Yeah, I appreciate it so much. But we thank you for joining us on the Coaches Unscripted podcast. We hope today's stories have inspired and empowered you. Please connect with us on Instagram at Coaches Unscripted Podcast. Give us a like, subscribe, comment, and share to continue the conversation and stay updated for future episodes. Follow Coach Boyle on Instagram at Michael_Boyle 1959, at MBSC Official, MBSC Online, and at MBSC TV. Coach Boyle, thanks again for joining us. For Mike Boyle, Corey Smallwood, I'm Trey Belcher. Keep coaching from the heart and building strong communities.
Thanks, guys.